Okay, everyone. Welcome to Passport to Wellness virtual retreat. This is taking place of our in-person Santa Barbara retreat. I wish I was with you all in Santa Barbara, but instead I'm coming to you live from my basement here in Arlington, Virginia. So what I want to do right now is I just want to kind of set the rules and set the expectations for the weekend. So I've got some slides that will hopefully make sense to you all, okay? So a little housekeeping. There's one Zoom link for all of the sessions this weekend. So the one that you're using tonight, that's the link that you'll use for every live session this weekend. So make sure you're checking the itinerary to make sure that you're straight on when the live sessions are and when, some of the on-demand sessions. We'll have live sessions and on-demand sessions that are recorded, but we're going to keep you busy throughout the weekend. Make sure you engage with us at your PAF. That's Instagram and also Twitter. So building a nice little opportunity for you this weekend. So I talked a little bit about Santa Barbara. These are some of our images from Santa Barbara last year. Those two images on the top. You've got George Reister and Denisha Reister there, along with some images from our New York City event last fall, highlighting the New York City event right here. Okay, take a look and enjoy. Nice. So we hope to be back with you all next year live. Okay. So throughout the weekend, we've got a wide array of sessions that will feature former players really leading the sessions. You'll hear from George and Denisha Reister, who showed up in the last slide, but George and Denisha. You got Joe Hawley there in the middle that will be part of our Mythbusters session. And then DJ Townsell will be leading some of our yoga and stretching and meditation sessions tomorrow morning and Sunday morning. Okay, moving on to slide 7, another video. And this is, Mythbusters, little teaser.
Once I select a therapist, I can stick with them.
Yeah, that's not always gonna happen like that. It's not always gonna happen like that. That's just like saying I find my high school sweetheart, and then the chances of that, the chances of that is pretty slim. Like you got to be that has to be divine order in place. Right, that has to be alignment in place, but that doesn't always happen unless it was aligned.
Right.
That's the only way that can happen. But that's not everybody's situation. I know for me, the first time I got approached about therapy actually was in college, and I went through a drought as a receiver. I couldn't catch a cold, and it was messing with me mentally that I wasn't able to snap out of it. So I was approached, by the guidance counselors at school saying, hey, you should talk to our sports psychiatrist. He's dealt with, guys in a situation like this before. And I didn't even give it a thought. I said, nah, miss me with that. I'll figure this out on my own. I'll go do something else, but I'm not doing that. It was because of that stereotype. It was because of that stigma that was connected to it, and I wasn't nearly as aware or mature enough to where I am now to see the difference.
Okay, so moving on to slide 7. So you see the baby blues session that's happening tomorrow, Saturday. You know, that was kind of kicked off by former quarterback Gus Farad and his wife Ann, who reached out to us to possibly see if there was any programming we could do on postpartum depression. So we listened, we heard. I think we've put together a nice session for you tomorrow for those of you that are interested in that. Then also on Sunday, we'll have a women's only breakout session Sunday morning. So look forward to that. And our women from Santa Barbara, all fired up, letting all the men out there know that we need them, okay? So here's the important information, okay? So let me just read what's on the slide first. What you need to have and what you need to bring. You need to have an open mind, bring a journal or a notebook, something to write on, because there's going to be good information throughout the weekend. It's just not all fun and games. You know, we're here to teach, and we're here to learn, and we're here to share with one another, okay? So utilize the resource tab for yourpaf.com. Also, hey, 2020 is not canceled. That's kind of our mantra and our mission for this weekend, okay? So to make this even more exciting, we do have some giveaways. So we're going to be giving away some rest and rewind boxes, and what's included in that box is a Sherpa blanket, a Chesapeake calming candle, and an engraved soft-bound journal, okay? So that's just some of the giveaways. I've got more information on that coming up. Okay, so here's a quote by Wayne Dyer. Our intention creates our reality. Okay, so follow us on social media channels for additional giveaways and opportunities. But for tonight, this is how you qualify for tonight's raffle. We're giving away 10 boxes tonight. So in the chat feature, this is how you qualify. You have to type in your intentions for the weekend. Type in your intentions for the weekend. You know, staff, everyone's working tonight. Tyrone's working, Carol's working, Laura's working, Leslie's working hard behind the scenes. They'll pull those names and they'll notify you by email if you've won, if you're one of the 10 winners, okay? So make sure you do all that and follow us on social media. And now to get to the good stuff, okay? And I'm gonna bring him on with this next slide, okay? My guest for tonight, and I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. This here, I'm gonna stop sharing so you can see just Torrey and I. My guest tonight is two-time Super Bowl champ, Torrey Smith, 8 NFL seasons. And just more importantly than that, has just really been making some good noise out there on social media. And I think he's someone that we all should follow because, you know, for me personally, I always like to learn from former players and certainly the ones that I interview. If some of you have seen the Collins Cafe at our former players getaway, you know the type of interviews that we do and they get real. But tonight I've got maybe the realest of all time, Torrey Smith. So I'm happy to have you, Torrey. So welcome.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
So who is Torrey Smith? Because, you know, I know Torrey Smith, the player, fast playmaker, a great player. And I was talking to someone today, and I had mentioned that I was going to interview you tonight, and they said, man, Torrey Smith was a great player. So, you know, who is Torrey Smith? Because in your relationship with your wife, and I heard her tease you on Instagram the other day, she said that you were an introvert, you know, and that during this whole social distancing thing, staying in the house would suit you just fine. So, you know, answer that, and then I want to know, so if you're such an introvert, where did you find this great voice out there on social media?
I tell my wife I'm a social introvert. Like, I'm social when I want to be in a place and I'm happy to be there. But I'm the person that, like, you know, if I come to your party, you invite me, like, I'm going to have a good time, right? I'm going to be laid back, chilling. But when I'm ready to go and my clock went off, I'm like, all right, y'all, I'm gone. I'm not the guy. I don't feel bad for leaving a place if I'm like, I'm tired of it. But my wife, she's very outgoing. She was a teacher. So she's like more happy-go-lucky and wanting to be around, wanting to socialize. I'm like super cool with chilling, just being home, being around my wife and kids. And as a man, you know, I feel like I'm a father now. Been married for 7 years. I have 3 beautiful kids, 2 boys and a baby girl. I'm growing in my faith. It's been a long journey. I'm just consistently trying to grind and try to be better each and every day. And I'm far from perfect, so I'm trying to continue to grow there. But that's really me. You know, you sum it up, you know, a black man that's living out here, trying to grow in his faith and trying to lead my family the right way.
Yeah, and I appreciate the authenticity in all of your conversations that you have. There's something real nice and real calming about the way that you approach those interviews. So, you know, you like to engage in some real thought-provoking conversations, you know, on your social media channels. So for this weekend, you know, one of the things that we have, and you saw, you know, your friend Brandon Coleman was featured in the Elephant in the Room. I think you and Brandon go back a little bit, or you're close friends today. But I thought maybe we could play a small version, just you and me, of, you know, Elephant in the Room. Okay, how's that sound?
A little surprised, but I'm ready.
Okay. So reaching out to others to help will only make you feel like you're a burden to them. So then that's, you know, true or false?
That's false.
That is false. And, you know, some of the clinical information to back that up is, you know, feeling like you're a burden when you have, you know, mental health issues or just dealing with some depression, whether mild or severe, is very detrimental to the individual and to their mental health. You know, so feeling like we're a burden can actually keep us from getting the help that we need. And, you know, mental health, depression, you know, all of these are so treatable, but you have to take the right step in the right direction and seek some help. Okay. So the second question is, people who are financially well off don't get depressed. True or false?
False.
That is false. That's completely false. Because I mean, from personal experience, I know a lot of people that I mean, in the old adage, you know, money doesn't make you happy, or money can't buy happiness. That you certainly have to look for fulfillment in so many different ways. Okay.
You are talking to one. That is absolutely false.
Yeah, and that if I can sidestep for a minute, you know, I saw something where, you know, Steve Biscotti, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, you know, gave you some good advice. And I've heard you say this on one of your podcasts about, you know, how you treat things, you know, or that you can't have, doesn't make sense to have more than one thing. Like if you have a pair of shoes, or if you have a suit, or if you have a car, you have what you need. You know, how do you develop, you know, that mentality? A successful player, you know, playing in these times, you know, where players, you know, through what they've earned, they're really, you know, they can really have an impact, you know, financially on the world, on the culture. But how do you maintain that mindset? I don't want to call it simple, but how do you maintain that mindset of being reasonable and living a certain lifestyle?
I think it just depends on the individual and where you stand. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. There are some people that you make enough money that they can do these things, right? They can live this lavish lifestyle. You have to act your wage. And that applies to NFL players, and as much as it applies to really everyone. And for me, I grew up in a situation where, you know, it was a struggle for us. My mom was always robbing people to pay Paul. And so I didn't know financial literacy in terms of being taught how to budget, how to save, but I knew what I didn't want to do. And I knew that wasn't the thing. So I was comfortable, even back then, coming up, knowing that, okay, you have everything you need. My mom's doing everything she can to provide for us. Whenever I had the opportunity to work and provide for myself, I'm going to live within my means and prioritize things. And I was never really a materialistic person because, one, we couldn't really afford it, but I learned that it didn't really matter, and there were other things that were more important than material things. And so when I made it to the NFL, learning and getting into this new space, it was like, all right, I'm here now. I remember Herm Edwards, was who you were referencing, about his story of one car, one watch, that really stuck with me. But then also Steve Bisciotti said to me one day, he was like, do you want to live like a king for a day, or do you want to live like a prince forever? Because too often, and from the outside looking in, and actually even playing in the NFL, you hear from players who struggled, they spent their money, they may have lost it all, they may have gone broke. And to me, that's like a cry for help in a way, because I feel like I can learn from other people's mistakes, but I also know that I'm no different than them, because I went into this, I never had money, and how am I going to be expected to keep it and to maintain it and understand it? So I went on this journey to educate myself more, and I always try to live for tomorrow, to make sure that, I was fine when I left, not so much present day. And I never really had it was never a challenge for me to keep up with the Joneses. I was always trying to keep up with my own responsibilities and priorities.
Yeah, that's great advice. And certainly what we do at the Professional Athletes Foundation is we try and help players through that, that emotional transformation, that financial transformation. And part of that tough conversation is, trying to convince players to downsize so that they can have a quality of life again. So, from some of my own experiences and from, working with so many players, I know that's a really tough decision for players to make. But more often than not, they always make the best decision and end up being able to transform and really go forward. So let me, you mentioned your mom and your family, growing up, I, saw that you're from Sandy Point, Virginia. So, that intercoastal of Virginia, some of the best kept secrets in this country, some of the waterways and some of the beaches. What was life like for you, growing up in Sandy Point?
Yeah, I'm from the northern net in part of Virginia, and it's only known for two things, especially Colonial Beach, is George Washington was born there and Robert E. Lee. Absolutely nothing else. It's boring, it's country, it's slow. But, that's where I'm from. And, my family has been there literally since slavery. Folks have never left. And it's been, I learned hard work from there, a bunch of blue collar, hardworking people. Our struggles were there. My family struggled just like a lot of people may have financially, with addiction, with trauma, with abuse. And these were all things that, again, they were kind of piled on to me. And I've tried to learn and live life in a way to try to kind of break some of the generational curses that exist, in my family.
So can you trace your family's history back to slavery?
Yes, you can. I had the opportunity to do that with the Virginia Library. I actually was tweeting, like, I was kind of, it wasn't a negative thing. I was just like, man, like, it's kind of a privilege to even know where you're from. I think it's really cool when I meet a friend and they're from Germany or they're from China or Japan, and they know like their culture. And, or even Africans that come here from Africa, they know they're Nigerian, they have that pride, and they understand their culture. And I'm like, man, I'm from Virginia, I don't know nothing else, right? And I was tweeting about, like, I don't know my history. So I had the opportunity to go down there, and they traced it all the way back. And it was pretty cool to see that, and to know that. I lived in that area, and I was curious because I'm like, man, no one moves to Westmoreland County. So I kind of figured that. And you ask questions, and people, it wasn't as clear as some families may have been in terms of understanding it, but the records were there, and it was pretty cool to see and to know. One of the coolest things from that experience is one of my family members, it was one of the first free men to register to vote. So that carries a whole new weight to me. I felt that way beforehand, but learning that, it's like, man, people have been fighting for a long time for something that we often take for granted.
Yeah. So that's a nice segue to, what's happening today, in social justice, because really the evils of 400 years ago kind of leads us to today where, we're still trying to understand, how this happens generation after generation. And I know you have a big voice out there on social media, and you've talked about social justice. So, where do you find the strength for that, and kind of what led you to that? Is it because of what you know about your past, or you're working hard to try and make a difference and be a voice for change?
I think it's from lived experiences and educating yourself. I wanted to be a criminal justice major, and I wanted to go to law school after if ball didn't work for me, because I knew that I had family members, my mother included, that were charged and had things happen to them where their sentences were longer than people that have done the exact same things that they have done, and whether it be because of the color of their skin or the money that they have. And so I was able to recognize early on, like, well, this system isn't fair if your money can determine the outcome of something that you did that's wrong. And so I wanted to continue to fight against that. And then you get older, you learn, you study, and actually in college, and you learn, like, wait, like, these laws were put in place for this particular reason, or that, like, it was a reason, a control factor, and to punish people as well. And being at the University of Maryland exposed me to so much. And being a player, you feel the responsibility of that. There's something that we talk about all the time, and players are talking about it as we speak. When it comes to police brutality, it's something that I've heard from my family members, but I've also seen people be abused. I'm pretty clean cut, but I've had guns drawn on me on 4 different times from police officers. So it's something that it's a lived experience, and I feel like if you know better, you do better. And it's my responsibility to help educate others and also speak up for people whose voices can't be heard.
Yeah. That's good stuff. So, I mean, the March on Washington is happening, as we're speaking, right now, and there'll be protests tonight and then more events tomorrow. So what message do you have for young people out there that are really on the front lines trying to, keep this movement alive?
To me, I'm so, and it comes off, some people like get offended when I say this, but like, I'm so solution oriented. Like, I think the symbolism, all the symbols that we come up with, whether it's protesting, whether it's kneeling, I'm just like, that. All that stuff is great and it's a part of the process, but what are we gonna do? Like, what does change look like? What kind of power do we have to actually create change? And so we need to go with actionable, tangible steps that we can take to go out there and create change. And I think anytime people go and they give their time, they give their money to an effort, it's for sure a rewarding experience, and you feel really good about it. But I always feel like, what more can we do? And so I'm not knocking protests. I was in the streets walking in Baltimore, when things were going on. But at the same time, it motivated me to do even more work, because I'm like, I'm protesting, trying to get people to hear it, but how do you hold people accountable to what you're actually trying to change? And so that's the part that I feel like we're not doing enough of. And so trying to create actionable steps to try to create change and to help educate, my peers and really everyone on that same process.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I mean, I haven't done it yet, but that will be one of the things that I do over these next couple of months, is to really try and trace my roots, and for me, I have a lot of pride in that space, and I'm really hoping that it does go back to slavery, because of all the hard work that, Black Americans put in, doing their part for this country. I really want to be able to tie myself back to that officially. So that's good stuff. But shifting gears for a little bit, you also tackle another tough elephant in the room, and that's a topic of, domestic violence and, spousal violence. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and you really, those are tough conversations, but you jump in there and you kind of tackle that, between, husbands and wives and, parents and children. And, that's admirable. Can you expound on, what's kind of led you to, wanting to have those tough conversations, and that, you're a former NFL player. You don't always have to jump into that arena. And that's one of the toughest arenas, domestic abuse, to jump into. So just expound on that a little bit for me.
Domestic violence is very important to me because I witnessed it growing up. And I witnessed it growing up, but some of my friends, some of my family members witnessed it in their households as well. And it was always this secret, like you kind of turn your eye, like you mind your business, right? Like that's family business. You let them take care of them. And the older, I grew, I realized how many issues that I had. Y'all were talking about mental health. Like, it was walls that I had built up and things that I had built up from my childhood that I didn't even realize until I was exposed to my wife. And the way she challenged the way I thought about certain things, or even not even challenges, asking me questions that I had never even been asked. And when you think about that and the abuse that my mom went through as a child, I couldn't do anything. And it's like, all right, as an adult, just because you saw something doesn't mean you have to repeat the same thing. And you don't have to repeat that cycle. And we often feel like, we easily can go and change things, right? Like as a man, you witness it growing up, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. Or excuse me, I saw it growing up, so that's why I'm doing it. Like that's not a good enough excuse, because the same man that says, hey, I witnessed it growing up, I'm going to do it, when they have a daughter, they're trying to kill somebody if they put their hands on their daughter. So I think it's important for us to be consistent in protecting women. And anytime I have the opportunity to do that, I will, because as a child, I couldn't. And I saw what it did to my mom. I saw how it ruined her life for a long time. I saw my mom with the gun to her head. He pulled the trigger while we're in the car, so that's something that was a real life situation where I didn't know if my mom was going to be alive the next day. She was in a very violent relationship. So I'm thankful that she overcame it, but I've also grown as well, because there was a time where I'd be like, why don't you just leave? Like, if I'm a child and I know this is wrong, I know you know this is wrong. But as an adult, I understand even how harsh that is and judgmental that may be. So it's important to talk to other people and to educate yourself again. And it's been freeing to me to understand that. So a lot of things that I held inside and issues that I even had with my mom, they aren't issues anymore because I understand. It doesn't mean that things were right, but I understand why she was in that, or excuse me, why she made some of the decisions that she made.
Yeah. And how did you move yourself forward from that? Because that's a very vivid image of trauma, but you've moved yourself forward through that, and you're in a successful relationship. Did you have a mentor? Did you read your way through it? Did you pray your way through it? How did you get to that point with your wife, Chanel, that you wanted to have a fulfilling, fruitful relationship without any hesitations or without any, stigmas or drawback from giving her the best of you?
My whole life was built on every decision I made was to not repeat what I saw. And that was key in moving forward, but that doesn't mean I wasn't carrying a bunch of baggage with me. My wife, to deal with me, especially early on, she had to deal with some stuff. I was a piece of work, in terms of emotionally, right? I might have been a good guy and all of that, but I was a piece of work. Certain things, like even perfect example, I'll give you something as little as support, right? Every wife, spouse, girlfriend, they want to be supported by their guy. I didn't even know how to receive honest support. She would be like, even when we were in college, she'd be at the games making signs, all happy and stuff. I'm not even looking back, when we're on the sideline. Like, and everyone else is like, hey, Chanel's trying to get your attention. I'm just looking forward. And she was like, well, why does everyone else wave to their family? And then you're just sitting there, and I'm like, I'm focused on the game. I was like, I don't know what support really looks like, because I was used to having people come. And when people would come to the games, they would tell me they're coming. I would invite them, and I would look back, and they wouldn't be there.
Right. So
that was something that I struggle with. And she's peeking through right now as my daughter snuck on through. She helped me to realize that I had some issues with me when it came to support. And it was because of things that had happened. I invited people, they didn't come. Yeah. Right. And it happened my entire childhood. And that's my mom included. Right. I was used to going and traveling with other people's families to go and play a sport or whatever it may be, and not having support there when people said they would come. So when she was giving me genuine support, I didn't know how to receive it. And I'm trying to, again, use that. I've learned to grow and accept it. And I realized that it was something that I really enjoy and I appreciate now. I don't even know what to do when she isn't there to support,
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you hear lots of players talk about sports and the energy that you have to use to play sports. That's kind of a release for you in your life. Was that something that you needed in your life? You needed to play because it was therapeutic?
Absolutely. You know what? Sports really meant so much to me. It was big. It's way beyond the game. Having the opportunity to be around other men that helped lead me and give me a picture and a painting of what a man is supposed to look like. Showing me love, something that I struggle with as well. And again, my wife had to deal with that. I didn't know, love to me had to be about action. If you say I love you, it had no value to me because I only heard I love you. When I'm looking at my mom between glass at a jail or something bad's happened, she's just been abused or we're getting evicted or whatever it may be. And she's trying to comfort me by saying, I love you. So it had absolutely no value to me, those words. And when I was able to realize that I associated everything with actions and do the right thing and know that I had men and coaches that showed me that, I saw how they were communicating with their wife. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't going to blows all the time. I'm like, man, this is how it's supposed to be. So it was so valuable for me. And then things would be happening. I could get away. We could be in transition, but I'm with someone else's family. We're on the field. We're on the court, whatever it may be. And I just had peace. And that was always my getaway.
Yeah. And I think you make a great point there when you say you saw other men and the way that they were communicating with their wives. And you said, wow, this is how it can be. So I think for a lot of us, sometimes we have to learn that, and we have to be intentional about that, because maybe we had fathers in our lives, but maybe they weren't always the best examples of how to love a wife. So you really do have to open your eyes, look around, and try and engage some of that. For me in my own life, I mean, my mom and dad were married for 65 years, but and my wife brought this to my attention, that my dad's dad died when he was 12 years old. So right at that critical time where you're trying to understand how to be a man and you're starting to begin to engage relationships, he didn't have a model for how that was supposed to be. Now, my dad was an amazing man, like I said, married for 65 years, home every night, worked hard, all the time. But he was more of a quiet, reserved man. So he never really gave us that outward understanding or that outward example of how to treat a woman. He was respectful, but there wasn't a lot of, there just wasn't a lot of great examples. He was a good man and he was a good husband, but I think it was more of his generation and his time where it's, hey, I'm going to work, I'm providing for my family, I'm checking the boxes, I'm a good husband. But it's so much more to that.
It is. That's real, because it's embarrassing and humbling it was a very humbling experience for me. But my wife, I have to talk to her, or she has to tell me how she wants to be loved. I don't like certain things. I'm thinking I'm checking the box. I'm doing this, whether it be as a parent, whether it be as a husband, a spouse. Yeah, we're doing this. I'm doing the basic things. But it isn't that simple. It's a relationship and a marriage is not just checking the box. And they might have some, I'm sure most men would agree, some women have some boxes that we don't even see. It's they expect us to know, but I'm telling her I don't know. And so for her to talk to me, sometimes she has to walk me through some things. And I have to be reminded of it, because it doesn't come natural for me to do certain things. And now before I should be what do you mean? The conversation, what do you mean I'm not doing that? I'm doing that. Now I'm just okay, let me take a step back. I don't know what I'm doing. She's telling me something. I need to make sure I'm doing everything I can to be better. And that's why I say it's a constant learning and growing process for me, because I don't have the answers. Clearly, she would tell me I don't have all the answers. And so I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing and covering her and loving her the way that she's supposed to be loved. And sometimes, you know, we have to put our guard down and be comfortable admitting we don't have the answer. Being comfortable going to someone else, talking to another man, a peer, about how they are in their relationships, because it's not simple and it's an ongoing journey.
And sometimes we have to be reminded of those lessons over and over again. So, you know, just one more question before we kind of get to the Q&A out there. I always like to ask players that I interview, you know, who's the most influential person that's been in your life? Who's that person for you?
It's too many people, man. I swear it's hard to pick that one. I mean, I think I have to pick my mom because I watched, even though my mom made a lot of mistakes, I watched her continue to show me what not giving up looks like, to show me what a hard worker looks like. She would give us her last, even if she was in a position, or the lowest position of her life, literally being abused, whatever it may be. She tried to make sure that we had whatever we needed, you know, to make it. And to watch her commitment, to watch her work ethic, to watch her, as from an early age, have a criminal record, but continue to educate herself, hoping that one day she would get a chance, and she did, and she's doing very well. But that was something that I watched her continue to work and sacrifice. So for me, when it came to sacrificing time and being committed and being dedicated, that's never been an issue for me because I witnessed it. And even though she made a lot of decisions that I was able to learn from, which probably adds to her influence as well, you know, almost the things that she did and the things that she didn't do, she poured a lot of value and a lot of strength in me. And, you know, I for sure have to say her and my grandmother.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So, you know, so for this weekend, we've touched on so many of the things that we'll be discussing in the sessions throughout the weekend. I think one of the things that we always try and accomplish with our Passport to Wellness couples retreat is that we want to bring couples closer together. We want couples to understand that even though there's been hurt in the relationship, that, you know, with help, you know, with some lessons, with some learning tools, you know, some coping tools, you're able to thrive and move forward. And I've seen some really amazing things happen at these retreats, and we have a great lineup. So let's go to some questions and see if we have any questions. And I really encourage everyone out there to really ask some questions because we have a little time right now. So I've got the first question here coming in from Rob Robertson. What was your compelling why in your life that pushed you to want to make a difference? So what was that why in your life that compelled you to make a difference?
My why was just, I didn't want what I saw growing up. I mean, it was that simple. And stability was key for me. A lot of people talk about what you play in the league, you're a lawyer, whatever you may be. Like, we all have our definition of success. And I was able to define my definition of success early on. It was stability, knowing where you're going to live, knowing that you're going to have food on your table, knowing that, you know, you're going to have a car to drive or whatever it may be, a job. Stability is my definition of success. So Oprah is just as successful as the janitor of my high school. And I was able to form that as an early age. Why? Because of everything that we went through. We weren't stable in any phase, you know, for a long time. So for me, that was what my motivation was and my why. And I knew that I couldn't control my current situation as a child, but I could control my future if I made the right decisions. And I just stayed on that path, trusted the people that believed in me, and followed their guidance, and everything ended up working out for me.
Yeah, thanks. And this next question I struggle with because I've looked at this book so many times. I've read it from front to back, and I still don't know what love language I speak. So how do you feel about the 5 love languages? But I think I'm romantic. My wife may think otherwise. But how do you feel about the 5 love languages?
My wife and I are opposites on that. I guess I'm an acts of service. If y'all haven't heard, you're gonna have to show me that you love me based on, you know, I don't need to be buttered up. I don't need any of that. I just need to know, like, you're dependable, you're consistent, that you care for me. But I think the 5 languages of love, I think it's cool to try to identify with something because you can recognize how how different you are. Like my wife is a weirdo when it comes to like, if I tell her she looks good or she's beautiful, she's like, she's all uneasy. But if I stop saying it because she keeps acting weird, then she's mad. Like, you haven't told me that. So it's like, it helps you kind of figure out, your partner and what she wants. And also, again, it helps you I think in any situation, communication-wise, when you're able to identify things, you have a path to go forward. So whether you're identifying mistakes or identifying the way that you love each other, you have a way and a map to kind of start where you're a starting point and a way to move forward. So I'm a fan of it. I'm not going to lie. I was that guy in the beginning, like, 5 love language. What are you talking about? And the more I started to dive into it, I'm like, wait, hold on. Like, this is important stuff.
Part of your playbook. It's part of your playbook now.
Right.
Good stuff. So next question, what's a challenge you combat as a dad/spouse that you think other former players may relate to? So challenge as a dad and a spouse that other players may relate to.
Thinking being there in the house in the same space as being present. That's something that's huge for me. I realize that just because you're in the same space doesn't mean you're present. So being more engaged with the kids. I do a lot of, I give my kids a bath at night. I'm playing with them, doing these things, but like, I had to learn to be more intentional about time with them because it's so easy to let, while you're playing the game, your preparation for that, and now that I'm transitioning, it's really easy to get caught up in stuff because you don't have a schedule in terms of keeping things that are keeping you away from your kids. So I've been more intentional about spending real quality time. Planning things and putting that cell phone down too, which is something that I will for sure be distracted by.
Yeah, being present is a huge one. Just like what you did with your daughter there when she wanted to come in, you came in, you gave her that time, you put her on your lap. And I think so many times we choose the opposite, and when we're busy, we maybe push our kids away, or when we're trying to get out the door for work and our kids want to just say one last thing to us. Sometimes just turning back and just giving them that time for that one last thing really makes a huge difference for them and really doesn't change the course of whatever we were about to do. 1 minute late or 1 minute early, it doesn't really change us, but turning back and spending that moment when they have one more thing to say it's huge. All right, so the next question is, this is from Rob. He's making a comment. He's saying, by the way, Torrey, we were both part of that Ravens flock. He's a former Raven. He said, grit plus grind equals greatness. Thanks, brother, for your words tonight. Very powerful. #powerful. So thanks, Rob. Thanks for tuning in. And one last question, I think. This is an anonymous attendee. Always wanted to ask you about the loss of your sibling, the effect it has had on your relationship and your family.
Yeah, so I lost my brother in 2012 in a motorcycle accident, and then we had the night of a Sunday night game, or the night before a Sunday night game, and it was the first time I had someone close to me that had passed away, so it was tough. I'm not a very emotional guy. Like I said, I had to be programmed to be more emotional. I had them feelings. I got to learn how to, it was a bunch of walls and chains around it, but I never really knew how to communicate that. And what's crazy is that I've had a lot of peace with my brother's death. I've been growing in my faith, so I was comfortable with that. But even beyond that, I started to tell my family members like that I love them. So for whatever reason, that last year or so before, my actions always showed it, but I would never say it. Like, I'm the type, even still, like, my mom would be like, oh, I love you. I used to be like, just give it a cold shoulder. Like, it was uncomfortable for me. Man, like, I used to tell him straight up, like, oh, man, I love you, man. I'm proud of you. And I let him know. So I felt real comfortable knowing that he knew that he was loved and that he knew that I loved him. And life, things happen. You can't prepare for it. So I try to maximize my time while I'm here and prepare for, my time when I'm gone.
Yeah, it's never easy. I mean, I'm somewhat older than you, but you know, losing a sibling is it's never easy, and there's so many things that remind you of them, you know, often. But you're right, you know, you do get sewn up. Those you know those wounds do heal to some degree, but you never forget, and you're always you know they're always kind of there. But no, that's tough, and I appreciate you being willing to answer that question. And with that said, Tori, I'm just gonna say I really appreciate the time that we've had with you tonight. You know, you're you know, not just a classy guy, but an elegant guy, and you really carry yourself well. So just blessings to you, and thanks for kicking off our conference. I think you've set the tone for a fantastic conference for the weekend.